She didn't even bother to lower her voice. "That's the janitor. And a single dad? You've got to be kidding. Who let him into this meeting?" The words floated across the polished glass conference room table like tiny daggers. A few people looked away. A few smirked. And one man, quiet, plain, invisible looking in worn work boots and a faded polo, shifted awkwardly where he stood, a mop bucket beside him. That man was Daniel. He wasn't just a janitor. He was a father. A widower. A man who lived quietly and kept his head down because life had already taught him that sometimes being seen only invited more pain. But Amelia, the woman who said it, didn't know that. She only saw what she wanted to see. Amelia was the type of executive who moved through buildings like she owned gravity itself. Everything about her said power, the sleek bun, the sharp suit, the posture of someone used to being the smartest and most successful person in the room. She had a reputation for being brilliant. And ruthless. So when the company hosted a high-stakes meeting with a government liaison and Amelia walked in to see a janitor still cleaning up, she didn't hesitate to say exactly what she thought. "Meetings like this require security clearance," she said coldly. "We don't need distractions." Daniel didn't respond. He simply nodded, grabbed his mop handle, and began wheeling the bucket away like he always did. He didn't defend himself. Didn't correct her. Didn't even look offended. He'd heard worse. But then something strange happened. The woman in the dark uniform sitting at the head of the table, the liaison, looked up sharply. "Excuse me," she said, her voice suddenly formal. "Did you say his name was Daniel?" Amelia frowned, annoyed. "Yes. The janitor." The liaison stood. "Sir," she said, addressing Daniel directly, "what is your code designation?" The room went silent. Everyone blinked. "Code designation." Daniel paused. He swallowed. For the first time, there was a flicker of discomfort in his calm brown eyes. He looked like a man who really didn't want to answer that question. But he did. Hawk. The air changed. It was as if the temperature in the room dropped and every molecule took notice. A few people gasped. The liaison stiffened. One of the security guards actually snapped to attention. "Hawk," the liaison repeated slowly. "As in Operation Nightfall, Hawk." Daniel nodded once. Amelia's heartbeat stuttered. She didn't recognize the operation name, but the reaction in the room told her everything. The liaison stepped forward and extended her hand to Daniel with unmistakable respect. "Sir," she said, "it's an honor." Amelia stared. This janitor, this quiet, overlooked single dad, had once been someone whose name carried weight inside the highest levels of classified operations. Daniel looked uncomfortable with the attention. "Ma'am, I'm just staff now," he said softly. But that wasn't what the others now saw. They saw the man who had saved lives. Who had led missions spoken about only in whispers. Who had walked away from elite service into a life of quiet anonymity. And Amelia, who had mocked him a moment earlier, felt the burn of humiliation rise into her cheeks. The liaison turned to the room. "For security purposes," she said, "it's important you understand, Hawk isn't just a nickname. He was one of the most trusted field operatives we've ever had. The fact that he's working here means you are far safer than you realize." Daniel cleared his throat. "Ma'am," he said gently, "I'd rather my past not be discussed." She nodded in apology. But the damage was already done. Not to Daniel's dignity. To Amelia's. Her thoughts were racing. Who was this man? Why was he working as a janitor? Why hadn't anyone told her? But the real question she would later ask herself was, why had she treated him as if he mattered less? After the meeting ended, the room emptied slowly. People who had barely noticed Daniel before now offered nods of respect. One guard even shook his hand. Amelia lingered. She approached Daniel awkwardly, heels clicking against the polished floor. "I owe you an apology," she said, and for once her voice carried no arrogance. What I said earlier was disrespectful. I judged you without knowing anything about you. Daniel gave a small shrug. Most people do. That sentence stuck with her. Most people do. She realized then that this wasn't the first time he'd been dismissed. Laughed at. Talked over. Treated as wallpaper. And she had added to it. They talked for a while. And slowly, pieces of Daniel's story came into the light. He had left the military after his wife passed away unexpectedly. Their son, Ethan, had been just 3 years old. Daniel hadn't wanted a life full of danger anymore. He wanted to be present. To raise his boy. To make sure Ethan never had to sit by a door wondering if his dad would return. The janitor job. It was steady. Honest. Flexible enough for school pickups and doctor appointments and bedtime stories. It didn't pay much, but it gave him something the military never had. Time. Time to be a father first. Amelia listened quietly. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't the one commanding the room. She wasn't the authority. She was just a woman learning that she had judged someone too quickly, and far too harshly. And it bothered her. Not because she had embarrassed herself. But because it forced her to confront something uncomfortable. She had built her life, and her confidence, on the illusion that title determined worth. CEO. Respected. Government official. Feared. Janitor. Ignored. Except now, that illusion had shattered. Over the next weeks, Amelia began to notice things she had never seen before. She saw how Daniel always helped elderly employees carry boxes. How he learned people's names. How he kept extra snacks in his cart for interns working late. How he rushed out at exactly 3:10 every afternoon to meet a smiling little boy with messy hair and a superhero backpack. She noticed the way Ethan's face lit up when he saw his dad. She noticed that happiness didn't always look like power. Sometimes, it looked